Welcome to Vox Orthodoxa. We are stepping into a sanctuary today, or perhaps, depending on your perspective, a kind of laboratory of the soul. We aren't just looking at history, we're looking for a cure.
And it is a fascinating, if somewhat rigorous prescription we're examining. We're diving into the Philokalia, Volume 7, and to be specific, we're looking at texts that came out of this period of intense spiritual and, political upheaval in the 14th century. The writings of Nichifor the Solitary, Theoliptus of Philadelphia, Gregory of Sinai, and of course the heavyweight champion of hesychasm, Gregory Palamas. Right, and these aren't just dusty manuscripts. The central question we are wrestling with today is deeply practical. Can the extreme ascetic practices of these 14th century monks, specifically this discipline of guarding the heart, and the psychosomatic breathing techniques they developed, can they offer a real tangible cure for the stress, the anxiety, and that profound lack of purpose that, let's be honest, plagues the modern city dweller?
It's a massive question, and I'm approaching this with significant caution. I appreciate the psychological depth of these writers. That's undeniable. However, I'm here to represent the skeptical perspective, sort of channeling the historical critic Varlam. I have to question whether these rigorous isolationist methods are actually practical or even healthy for lay people. Can physical techniques truly produce spiritual results, or are we just talking about, hyperventilation and self-induced trance states?
I think you'll find it's much more than that. My position is that this text, I would argue that this text provides the ultimate blueprint for mental health and spiritual peace. The return to the heart isn't just a monk's task, it is the only escape from modern alienation.
Well, that is a bold claim. Let's see if the text supports it. Where do you want to begin this examination?
Condition, one that I think defines the modern experience perfectly. He says the human mind, the nous, is like a traveler who has left home. We are functionally spiritual exiles.
It's a beautiful image, certainly. The idea of homelessness is a potent literary device. It speaks to that nagging sense that we don't quite fit in our own lives.
And all this sensory input. The whole goal of his method is to bring the mind back into the heart. And he makes this promise. He says that when the mind finally finds the heart, it is filled with unspeakable joy, just as a man returning home from a long, exhausting journey embraces his wife and children.
I can see why that resonates. We all feel that sense of exhaustion from being always on, or what sociologists might call continuous partial attention. We're scattered across a dozen browser tabs and 5 messaging apps. But here's where I stumble, and where I think the cure might be worse than the disease. It's the method. Nichifor doesn't just say, think about home or meditate on gratitude. He prescribes a very, very specific, almost mechanical technique to achieve this.
He does. He calls it the science of stillness.
Science is a strong word for it. He talks about physical isolation, sitting on a low stool, about 9 inches high, pressing the chin against the chest, and strictly controlling the breathing to literally force the mind into the heart. He's talking about manipulating physiology to induce a spiritual state. It just sounds incredibly uncomfortable.
That is the description, yes, it is physical labor.
Is that accessible? Is it even safe? If I have a 9-to-5 job, a mortgage, and a commute, I can't exactly sit on a low stool with my chin on my chest for hours, compressing my diaphragm. It feels like trying to force the mind into the heart might just be another form of stress, a rigid performance metric, rather than true spiritual freedom. It sounds oppressive, like we're trading the stress of the office for the stress of a posture drill.
I see why you interpret it that way, and honestly, if you view it purely as a physical exercise, it does sound absurd. But let me offer a different perspective. You're focusing on the mechanics, but you have to look at the intent. The rigidity is a counterbalance to chaos. Think about the story Nicephorus tells about St. Anthony the Great to set the stage for this practice. This is the foundation of what they call nepsis, or watchfulness.
You mean the story where Anthony sees the traveler dying of thirst?
Yes, Anthony is sitting alone in the mountains. Miles away there are 2 travelers. One has died of thirst, the other is dying. And Anthony calls 2 monks and tells them exactly where to go to save the survivor. Now, the question Nicephorus poses is, how did he know?
Well, that's exactly my point. Nicephorus uses this story to prove that a purified mind becomes clairvoyant. He suggests that if you do these breathing exercises, you unlock supernatural abilities. You see things far away. That seems like a dangerous hook for a spiritual text. How does gaining clairvoyance help a modern person just trying to handle their emails? It sounds like magic, not therapy. It suggests the goal of spirituality is to get superpowers.
But that's a superficial reading of the event. I would argue Nicephorus isn't promising magic in the superhero sense. He's talking about clarity. He's arguing that because Anthony wasn't distracted by his own internal noise, his worries, his ego, his plans for tomorrow, he was hyper-aware of reality. He was connected to the interconnectedness of things.
So you're arguing it wasn't supernatural vision, but a lack of distraction? That seems like a stretch given the text literally says he saw them.
Well, consider the context of nipsis. The word means sobriety or watchfulness. Modern anxiety blinds us. We walk past people suffering every day because we're looking at our phones or worrying about a conversation we had 3 hours ago. Our internal static is so loud we can't hear the world. Anthony's pure heart meant his receiver was tuned perfectly to the signal of the world. Watchfulness opens our eyes to the needs of others. That is deeply practical for the modern soul. It's about being present enough to intuit reality.
So in your view, the miracle is simply being fully present?
Essentially, if you stripped away every selfish thought, every anxiety, every distraction, what would you perceive? You'd perceive the world as it actually is. That might look like a miracle to those of us living in the fog.
I can accept the psychological validity of clearing the static. If you aren't obsessed with yourself, you notice the world. That's a fair point. But we have to address the body, because this is where the controversy really heated up in the 14th century, and it's where I get stuck today.
The controversy of the psychosomatic method.
Right. The text describes this method of Nicephorus and Gregory of Sinai, sitting on that low stool, compressing the diaphragm, holding the breath to control the mind. In the text, we see references to the critic Varlam. He mocked these monks mercilessly. He called them omphalos psychoi, navel-gazers. He thought it was ridiculous, even heretical, to think that the grace of God resides in your navel, where that you can breathe your way to salvation. It reduces the divine to a breathing exercise. It materializes the spiritual.
I'm not convinced by Varlam's reasoning because it assumes a separation between body and spirit that this tradition and, frankly, reality rejects. This is where St. Gregory Palamas comes in with his defense. He argues against Varlam that the body is not evil. That's a Gnostic view, the idea that we are ghosts trapped in a machine and need to escape to the spirit. Palamas says the body is the temple of the spirit.
Your body is a temple is a standard trope. It's easy to say, but does it justify hyperventilation techniques?
Palamas takes it literally. If the body's the temple, then physical posture, your heart rate, your breath must play a role in prayer. You can't pray with just your abstract intellect. Anxiety lives in the body, doesn't it? We feel it in our chest, our shallow breathing, the tension in our shoulders. We don't just think anxiety, we embody it.
That is true. Cortisol is a physical reality. You can't think your way out of a panic attack usually. You have to regulate the body.
Exactly. So the cure must also involve the body. Palamas argues that we tether the wandering mind to the rhythm of the breath. It's a tool to cure the fragmentation of modern multitasking. When you control the breath, you signal safety to the nervous system. It's not reducing God to air. It's preparing the vessel to receive God. It is holistic in a way that modern medicine is only just catching up to.
That is a compelling argument. It actually aligns with modern somatic therapy. The idea that you have to regulate the bottom-up processing of the nervous system before you can do top-down cognitive work. It's fascinating that 14th century monks figured out the vagus nerve before we had a name for it.
They didn't have the biological terms, but they had the experiential data. They knew that if the breath is jagged, the mind is jagged.
But let's look at the specific tool they use, the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. All 4 authors in this volume point to this as the anchor. It's the mantra.
It is the center of the wheel.
But here is the problem. Gregory of Sinai provides this incredibly detailed, almost clinical analysis of how thoughts, or logismoi, attack us. He breaks it down into stages: provocation, coupling, ascent, captivity. It reads like a diagnosis of addiction.
It essentially is. It's a taxonomy of how we lose control of our minds. A breakdown of the slide from just a thought to obsessive behavior.
It is fascinating, but as a modern person, I am exhausted just reading it. We are bombarded by thousands of provocations daily, notifications, news headlines, advertisements, worries about the future. If every single one of those is an attack I have to fight, it seems impossible. I feel defeated before I even start. How can a regular person fight off 10,000 thoughts a day without developing a neurosis? It feels like we're being asked to become mental police officers, constantly patrolling our own brains. That sounds like a recipe for a breakdown, not peace.
You're misunderstanding the tactic. You don't fight them. That's the secret in the text. You don't argue with the thoughts.
What do you mean? The text speaks of warfare?
Yes, but the weapon is refusal, not engagement. If a thought comes, say, a worry about your job stability, and you engage with it, you start analyzing it, planning for it, worrying about it, you've already entered the coupling stage. You're arguing with the demon. You've lost. The method of resistance described by these fathers is to use the prayer as a sword. You cut the thought off at the provocation stage. You replace the complex worry with the simple prayer. You don't analyze the anxiety. You pivot to Christ.
So it's a disruption technique. You short-circuit the loop.
Precisely. Instead of spiraling down the rabbit hole of what if, you anchor yourself in the present invocation of mercy. It's a way of saying no to the noise so you can say yes to the present.
I can see the utility in that, but surely there are days where even that feels like too much?
And there is a nuance here that I love, which counters your fear of rigidity. Theoliptus of Philadelphia offers advice that is very tender. He says that sometimes you are just too tired to fight. You can't pray with the mind because you are exhausted. In those moments, he says, pray with the lips. Just chant. Or, interestingly, do manual labor.
I did catch that. He acknowledges that we aren't robots.
Right. He says, when you cannot work inside, work outside. There's flexibility. It's not about being perfect. It's about not giving up. It's about recognizing your limits and still orienting yourself toward the good. It's a very humane concession.
That flexibility helps, certainly. It makes it feel less like a boot camp and more like a hospital. But I want to pivot to the intellectual side of this debate. There's a tension in the text, specifically with Palamas regarding knowledge. We have this conflict between Palamas and the philosophers. Varlam argues that education, logic, studying the stars, or nature, what we would call science and philosophy, is the primary way to understand God. Palamas seems to shut that down aggressively.
He doesn't shut it down. He puts it in its place. He creates a hierarchy.
But he seems to say that intellectual knowledge is useless compared to this inner light. For a modern society that values science, data, and empirical evidence, isn't this dangerous? Are we saying, don't think, just feel? That sounds like a slide into anti-intellectualism. It sounds like the kind of thinking that leads people to reject medicine or ignore climate data because they feel a different truth.
Not at all. Palamas clarifies the distinction between knowledge of things and knowledge of God. He uses a metaphor that is quite famous in this tradition, the difference between reading a textbook about honey and actually tasting honey.
The tasting metaphor?
Yes. You can know the chemical composition of honey. That's science. That's valuable. Palamas doesn't say it's false. But knowing the chemical formula is not the same as the sensation of sweetness on your tongue. That is experience. Palamas argues that the philosophers have the recipe, but the hesychasts, the practitioners of stillness, have the meal.
And you think that distinction is relevant to us? We have plenty of experiences. We're the most stimulated generation in history.
Do we have experiences or do we have consumption? Look at us today. We are drowning in information. We have knowledge of things coming out of our ears. We know everything about global warming, economics, politics. We have access to the sum of human knowledge in our pockets. But are we happy? Are we at peace?
We're definitely not at peace. We're arguably the most anxious society in history.
Because we are starving for direct experience, we have the menu, but we aren't eating. The text offers a path from information to sensation. It moves religion and life itself from the head, where it causes arguments and doubt, to the heart, where it causes warmth and love. It's not anti-intellectual, it's super-intellectual. It goes beyond where the mind can reach.
I have to admit, that distinction hits home. We are an over-informed, under-experienced generation. We consume content about life rather than living it. We watch videos of people hiking instead of hiking. We read tweets about love instead of loving.
Exactly. Palamas is inviting us to put down the book about honey and open the jar.
I will concede this. While I still find the physical methods, the chin on the chest, the holding of breath, a bit extreme for the corporate office, the underlying psychology is sound. Watchfulness is the antidote to the attention economy. We have an open-door policy with social media, letting any thief enter our mind. These monks are telling us to hire a bouncer.
That is a perfect way to put it. Guarding the heart is hiring a bouncer for your soul. But I would push you one step further. It isn't just self-help. It isn't just about focus or productivity.
Here comes a theology.
It is about union. The text insists that the kingdom of heaven is within. This isn't a metaphor for feeling good. It's an ontological reality for them. The method is simply a map to find a treasure that is already buried in your own chest.
And that is a hopeful thought, even for a skeptic, that the peace we are frantically searching for in vacations, in purchases, in new careers, it's actually sitting right there under the noise.
We're sitting on a gold mine, begging for pennies.
Well, whether you're ready to adopt the breathing techniques of the 14th century or just want to try turning off your notifications for an hour, there is undeniable wisdom here. It forces us to ask, who is actually in charge of my mind, me or the noise?
Indeed. It is a call to return home. Thank you all for joining us on this journey into the desert of the heart.
Thanks for watching until the end. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it. It helps me out a lot. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the notification bell to be notified when I post next time. See you soon!